think I might have messed up. I wanted to do a video on Perdigons, and when I tie Perdigons, I tie them real simple. I don't try to tie fancy or good-looking Perdigons, not for me to fish, and so I tied them like that, but that wasn't all I did. I tried a new set of snips that I'm going to do a review of in another video, but I also tried some new thread. I like the thread. Snips I should have practiced with a little more before I did the video. But here's 4 different ways, 4 different materials you can use to tie Perdigons that make a Perdigon that looks a little bit different. Remember, these Perdigons are designed to sink to the bottom quick. That means they need to be slim, they need to be heavily weighted, and gosh, if I messed up by doing these too simple, if I should have made them prettier, I'm sure you'll tell me in the comments.
Another fly for your box from Father's Fly Shop.
We're going to start out with probably the simplest kind of Perdigon there is. And see, I think a Perdigon is a style of fly and not just a specific pattern. So the typical tail that we use for a Perdigon is going to be Coq de Leon or CDL. And you can get these in all kinds of different colors and styles. This is a fluorescent green, black, and notice on the black, it's truly black. There's no stripes or anything like that on it. You can get it in a light colored, a light speckled, you can see, and then dyed red and dyed orange. And there are also other styles of Coq de Leon. These packages, like I was showing you, only come with like a dozen feathers, but as you can see with this particular, which is kind of at its end, you can get an awful lot of flies. We're just going to put 6 or 7 fibers on each one of these, and so I'm going to pull them out and get them straight, get the ends matched up. And I used to just tear these off, but I found that it works best as far as keeping them aligned if you just clip them. And then I like these to be about the same length as the shank. So we'll tie the tail in. And I do the 45-degree angle tail. Just hold it about 45. Come up over it in sort of a loose loop. And then the second loop should pull it to the top. And if it doesn't, take a couple of wraps over it and then straighten it to the top. And then just hold on to the tail and wrap back over it. Watch the point of the hook. And then just clip off the excess and wrap down. Now you'll see some ties where people build up behind the bead, and I don't do that. Part of the reason that the Perdigon is so effective is that it's thin and it's heavily weighted. This bead is a little bit oversized, and it's coated with UV resin, which gives it even more weight and makes it slick. So the simplest Perdigon that I tie is just a thread body, and this happens to be chartreuse. And I just do 3-turn whip finish, and just out of habit another 3-turn whip finish. And then we'll take off the excess. And once we've done that, then in order to finish the fly, I'm using some black Solaris, and this has a brush in it. So all I'm going to do is pull the brush out and get a good size drop. And this is the reason I don't worry about building anything up behind, because I'm going to use this to both fill in the bead and to make that wing case, black wing case on the back. So there we go. Now that we've got the back, and that's dry, set. Then we take another clear solar resin, and this is bone dry. And I'm just going to put a little bit of bone dry all the way around. If I get too much, I'll just touch it and pull it back. Now, before we cure this, you'll notice that some of it ran into the eye. And if you don't do this now, you will not be able to. It'll be very difficult to get that out. But I keep just a little piece, just scrap of a rooster feather, hackle, and I'm just going to pull that through, and you can see how that cleans out the eye. So once I've got the eye cleaned out, turn it upside down so it doesn't run anymore, and then turn the light on, and we'll just let it go like that. Now I could have tied this. This is actually a UV green CDL, and if we look at it, you see you get some luminescence there with the UV light, so you can do that if you want to. But that's pretty much the simplest Perdigon that you can fish. So jig hook on this one, you don't have to tie it on a jig hook. Just chartreuse thread and little spot of black. If you don't have the black, just make that spot with some kind of thick resin, cure it, and then color it with a Sharpie or something like that. So that's the simplest of the Perdigon patterns that we're going to tie. So we can spice up that pattern a little bit. If I want to put ribbing on it, I can color the thread with a Sharpie, or I can use something like a fine wire. And colors can be very important in these flies. I would say the major colors, I like chartreuse, I like purple, but I would also tie some in a gray, kind of a medium gray color, a black, maybe an olive, and a tan or brown kind of color. And there are all kinds of materials out there to do that. So let's take a look at another option here. Let's take a look at a black body fly with a silver rib on it. And you can also use a different color bead here. We could use a silver bead on this. I'm going to go ahead and stick with the black. So we'll start the thread, work back to the end of the shank, pull out 6 or 8 fibers, grab those, clip off, measure those to the length of the shank, clip off the excess. We'll take a fine silver wire. This is the 0.1 millimeter Semperfli in the silver. I'm going to take that and wrap to the front, and then turn around and come back. And again, watch the point of the hook. You will cut the thread and take nice touching wraps. If your thread gets corded, and it will twist, spin it counterclockwise, and that'll flatten it out again. And then just going to take some wraps to rivet. This is basically the same pattern as a zebra midge, except that it's got a tail and it's on a jig hook. And once that's done, we just take the wire and snap it off. And now, same as the other Perdigon we tied, we'll grab a whip finisher. Couple 3-turn whip finishes. Cut the thread. It's up to you whether you want to use colored resin here. If I used a silver or gold bead on this, I would definitely use a colored resin. And a lot of times on these, I turn them upside down immediately when I get the resin on them, because I don't want it to run down into the bead. And then I just set it this way. Another quick trick with resin. This is a silicone mat. You can get them in the beading department at a hobby store. The neat thing about silicone mats is the resin, if you harden it on there, it won't stick. You can just bend the mat, it'll pop off. Also, epoxy won't stick. So if I'm mixing epoxy, I'll mix it on this little silicone mat, and I think it was $5 or $6 at the hobby store. So if I'm going to do several of these, what I'll do, and this is Solaris thick, I don't like to apply with the end of this because I don't have as much control over it. So I'll just stick a drop on the mat, and of course it's not going to cure unless it gets hit with UV. So you can put more on there if you want to. And then I got these are actually little makeup Q-tip like things. It's actually smaller than a Q-tip. But I think I got 400 of these for about $6 or $7. So they're great because they have this little kind of microfiber tip on them. And you can, what I usually do, I use these for any kind of glue application. I'll apply even super glue with these. But if I'm mixing epoxy, I mix the epoxy with the back of it, and then I can apply with the front. And you can just pick up pretty much as you want, roll it on the mat, and then come and apply it. And it gives you really good control over what you want to apply. And then, as long as you don't get the UV light on it, it will stay liquid, and you can keep using that on fly after fly after fly. And so there's a black. So for this Perdigon, what I've done is I've started some yellow thread. I've left the tag. This is an 8/0 yellow thread. I just put the tag in my material spring, and I put the tailing material in just like always. And I'm going to grab some holo tinsel. This is a pink Holo Tinsel. And so I'm gonna just cut a little bit off. By the way, this is the same stuff as like a Hedron Flashaboo. So as this hanked, they call it hanked, or spooled, either way, just whichever one is easier for you to deal with. So this pink, or it almost looks purple to me. So for this one, what I'll do is I'll tie in the tinsel. At the front, and then wrap back over it to the end of the body. And then I'll come back spiraling to the front. And now I'll take the tinsel and wrap it over the body. To the front, and then we'll tie it off. Snip it. And we'll take some wraps over that. I want sort of a yellow collar on this. So I'm going to take several wraps over this. And then I'm going to use the thread to create just a really fine rib. You can do this with more prominent ribbing thread, a more contrasting color. White would show up. You could do it with silver wire. Just illustrating the technique here. You can also, as I mentioned with prior Perdigons, you can also color this with a Sharpie or something like that. But I want sort of a yellow collar on this one. And so there's all kinds of tinsel, both holo and just plain tinsel, mirror tinsel if you will, that works great for this. And I'm going to grab my little swab. And cover the body. And once that's done, hit it with your UV light. And if you want to put a black spot on the back of it, shell casing, whatever you want to say, you can do that. In this case, I'm going to put just a tiny one, just a dot. And that's another way to use the colored resin. Instead of putting a good bit on there, you can just stick a dot on it after you're done. Colors of thread, I've mentioned before, you can assort these. You can also assort tinsel colors. So the last Perdigon I'm going to tie here, we're going to start out with a thread that's a blue dun color. That's a UTC Ultra thread, 70 denier. And for the tail on this, I'm not going to use a Coq de Leon. I'm actually going to use some fluorescent orange 210 denier ultra thread. And so what I'm going to do is just pull off a foot or so of it and clip it. And then I'm just going to kind of wind it back and forth in my hand to make sort of a bundle of it that's got, 4, 5, 6 fibers. You can do this with anything. You can do this with a floss. You can do it with Glow Bright, anything like that that you want to use. So you just want to wind up with a little loops, and then we're going to put this down, take a turn over it, and sort of set it where it goes, which is right at the end of the shank. Then I'm going to take a couple of turns over it and then pull all the rest of it back. And take some wraps around it. These are really firm wraps, and I want to go up the shank. The other thing I want to mention on this is the other Perdigons I tied on a jig hook. For this one I swapped out. I'm using a silver bead, and I'm also using we're going to wrap down and make sure we get this covered. Be sure to avoid that hook point. You will cut your thread if you don't avoid it. And because this is a light colored thread and also ultra thread seems to me to show colors underneath it through a little more, I'm going to build up a good body here. All right. Now, I'm going to cut the tail to whatever length I want. And then to finish this off, I'm going to use, there are a lot of these. In fact, these are a couple of options from UTC, a Mirage Opal, and a Pearl. This is an Ice Blue. And these are actually somewhat transparent. They do have a little bit of color to them. This is a little more mirrored. The opal is a little more mirrored, but they'll allow whatever color is underneath them to show through. So if I just clip off a little bit of this pearl in Ice Blue, and notice it's just almost clear, except it's got a little bit of color to it. I'll come back up here, and then we'll just wrap over the body. And if you look in, Superfly has a line of products called Perdigon Body, and those, in that line, there are some clear products or some products you can see through, as well as what they call translucent, which are a little bit more opaque. You can't see through them quite as well. And we'll finish this off like this. And you can see you get just a little bit of shine out of that. On top of that blue dun body. And then paint it in your favorite way. With your favorite UV resin. Actually, I think that's about gone. Let's hit this with the bone dry. And there is a slightly different Perdigon look, but still a Perdigon. So there's 4 different ways to tie a Perdigon that give you very different looks, but still keep the slim body, quick sink kind of style. And you can also use different tailing, as you can see with using just fluorescent thread. You can use thread, you can use floss, you can use yarn, whatever you want to use. And in fact, you can even use other synthetics, whatever rocks your boat.